Today, if you look at typically what Motorola does in the place of first responders, which is police, fire, EMS, you're looking at two-way radio communications primarily is what we do. All those agencies today are using data. Believe it or not, they all have data networks with Sprint or Verizon, AT&T, the carriers. And they typically are just paying for air cards and X amount of fees per month, and they use them in vehicles or laptops and such. So one of the things that's happened in the past few years is that the FCC has determined that, in the past, two-way radio seems mission-critical voice. Now, these folks, as applications evolve, there's something called mission-critical data, which should be dedicated for public safety only. So these guys, the police, the fire, these guys, when they're responding to an incident, they shouldn't have to compete for bandwidth with a consumer. If there's some teenager sitting in a Starbucks streaming a movie where a police officer is trying to stream a video of a hostage situation, that is really the distinction why they felt that public safety should go build their own private broadband networks. And what they did there, as they also determined that they also went to say, well, what standards should we use for broadband for public safety? Given the fact where most of these cellular industries headed with 3GPP and also looking at the economies of scale, they went ahead and adopted LTE for public safety. So without further ado, I just want to kind of get into the solution a little bit. So Motorola's solution, what do we bring to the table, right? So as part of an LTE network for broadband, for public safety, we bring obviously the infrastructure, which is your cell sites, your back-end EPC, your core, and of course, the actual devices for first responders, which could range from a handheld, a tablet, a vehicle modem, a MiFi type device, it's endless. And one of the other things is that there's a huge focus that the networks should be all completely open standards. In the end of the day, you might have states, cities, counties going out and building these networks out, but in the end, it has to end up with a national network. Now, there's a lot of speculation on what may or may not happen based on legislation in Congress, but end of the day, you need a network. Either it's a single network or it's multiple networks that need to be able to interoperate with one another. Meaning if a first responder goes to a mutual aid situation in a different place, it should be seamless for his device, as we do. This morning when I landed, I flew in from Washington, D.C., I landed at LAX, seamless to me. I turned on my phone, same services, no difference. And that's what they're really aiming for first responders as well. So we'll get more into that. So now let's talk about the alliance and what we're really doing here with Verizon Wireless. So the key is, one of the things to talk about is money and funding. So I go to, let's say, a state or a city who says, I have money to build out 5 sites in this certain geographic footprint for private coverage. So what happens when there's a high-speed chase, or not even a high-speed chase, police officers going home? When they go out of that coverage area, what happens, right? This is where Verizon Wireless comes in. Our devices that we have in Motorola are dual band, band class 13 and band class 14. So they can operate on Verizon Wireless' spectrum as well as ours in the public safety LTE. That's for state and local jurisdictions. And more also is around how you actually start building out. For example, if you are an agency that's building out a statewide network, it might take you 4 years to get there. But with the fact that we have this alliance, day one, they can start provisioning devices, which day one will be roaming on Verizon, but as the private coverage gets built out, they'll be more roaming in private in their own network rather than the Verizon network. Hope that makes some sense. Next slide. Thank you. So some of the other things that have really come with the alliance, right? So I touched on some of these. First and foremost is the Motorola built band class 14 network. So it's actually, having, and think about it this way, we have the carriers today, but this is state and locals building their own personal cellular LTE network for themselves only. No consumers. We're talking about carrier roaming. We have built network roaming with Verizon Wireless, which is separate from device roaming, which is network roaming, which will eventually be, give you the true seamless to the end consumer, right? So when a person's in a pursuit or they're doing something in terms of video or voice and other things, have to have that network-to-network roaming with Verizon really comes into play. And network site sharing, I think, Tony, you want to talk about that one a little bit? You can have this one if you want to walk.
Jumping around on him back there.
You want to take?
So on the network site sharing, one of the things that we're working with the local jurisdictions at Verizon Wireless along with Motorola is being able to share and co-locate those public safety eNode Bs on our cell site towers, which is reducing their CapEx, OpEx, and providing them that scalable capability to quickly deploy, as well as site share the joint fiber, the HVAC, the battery backup, as well as there's additional offered services that we're putting into the bundle as well. The other is that we're dynamically increasing our device portfolio, working with a variety of manufacturers, and providing the consolidated device management. So we're going to be talking about a little bit on some of the features here in a little bit on some of the really tight integration that we're doing between Verizon and Motorola. And then one of the other big things is the robust disaster recovery. So cell on light trucks, cell on wheels, we're bringing full bear our Verizon Wireless business continuity and disaster recovery team to backfill any needs that public safety has, because all of this federal funding that is out there for public safety does not include cows and colts and that infrastructure. So even if the public safety tower goes down, we're still rolling our cows and colts, and then these devices that we're talking about with Band 13, Band 14 class, interoperability roaming. If the public safety entity completely loses their tower in the area, we're rolling our coals and cows, and their devices would work in that place.